Yo, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
All right, Haas. Thank you for having me on, sir. Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know. I'll go ahead and just talk about what I was gonna talk about. Maybe it's not even a disagreement. We'll see. But I'm just a little confused as to why you never just you if you're going against Israel, why don't you just come out and be against the people who are promoting and pushing forth Israel and the international Zionist agenda all over the world? Like, why are you so afraid to be like, oh, it's not the Jewish people, it's the Zionists. It's not this, it's not that. I stand with my Orthodox Jewish brothers. Like, I'll tell you like a specific quote you had when you were debating these other like Orthodox LARPer guys, and I agree they were LARPers. They were a piece of shit, but you want like my Orthodox Jewish brothers stand with me or stand with the base side of the world against every global issue. But I mean, do you really think that Orthodox Jewish people do not stand in support of Israel? Do not support like the virility and the strength and aggressiveness of Israel?
To answer your question about why I don't claim that Zionists are the same as Jews, the reason is because I'm not a Zionist. It's part of Zionist ideology to conflate Judaism and Zionism, and I don't share the Zionist worldview. I don't agree that when the majority of Zionists are actually Christians, and one of some of the most powerful Zionist forces in the world and in America are evangelicals who are not Jewish at all, I don't think it's accurate or correct to say that it's a primarily Jewish phenomena.
I mean, sure, that's definitely true, but where did the Zionism of the evangelicals come from? It wasn't just spontaneous. They didn't come up with it on behalf of Christianity, or else I mean, Israel would be a Christian state. Obviously, the Zionism of the evangelicals had to originate
Yeah,
from
I think you
somewhere.
misunderstand evangelical Zionism because it's based on a prophecy. They don't want Israel to be Christian. They have believe that the Jews are all going to be they're going to kill the Muslims and they'll kill each other and then Christ will return. That's basically what they think. So they don't want. It's not that they're trying to evangelize and turn Israel Christian. They think it's part of a prophecy. So and many people find it convincing, you know. So evangelical Zionism, just like Jewish Zionism, Jewish religious Zionism, is really a form of evangelical religious Zionism that's not Jewish. It's actually a sect of claims to be a sect of Christianity, which
So if
has
given that case, why are the majority of Jews, even in the United States, the majority of Jewish people are in support of Israel? I think the statistic is something like 80% of Jewish people say Israel is essential for them. It means a lot to their Jewish identity. And you know, as we've seen in these recent protests, many just average everyday Jewish people are incredibly passionate about Israel. So I mean, are you denying that there is like a Jewish effort to strengthen and build Israel?
no. I think Zionists have played a huge role in um, trying to dominate how Jewish identity is shaped in the U.S. and in the West. So it's no surprise that the majority of Jews in the U.S. are pro Zionist. But where I disagree with you in claiming that Judaism is necessarily Zionist is I think you're writing all of those people off, where I think majority of them are pro Zionist because they lack education. They're brainwashed their whole life to support Israel. And there's so much money, millions, billions of dollars that goes into brainwashing them by Zionists trying to dominate Jewish identity in America. Many of them just aren't exposed to the truth, and oftentimes when they are, they become anti Zionist. So even though the majority of Jews in the US are Zionist, I reject blaming all the Jews or saying all Jews are Zionist or making it about Judaism because at that point, you're basically writing them off and saying, you know, there is no way they could ever um, disentangle from that, which I think actually harms the anti Zionist cause.
I mean, I would kind of say though, I feel like there isn't really a way they would disentangle from it because You say, well, the Zionists have manufactured this love for Israel amongst Jewish people, but I mean, don't you think it's a natural feeling of patriotism, of nationalism for them? Is it unnatural or surprising that a Jewish person would care deeply about their own country, their own homeland?
The reason I don't think it's natural is because so much effort has to go into brainwashing them to be pro Zionist. If they were just naturally pro Israel, there wouldn't be all these institutions and there wouldn't be this huge attempt by, Zionist forces to basically brainwash and convince them of that. So I don't see it's natural at all. Secondly, although the majority of Jews in the US are pro Zionist, so are the majority of Christians. So I don't see what your point is.
Sure, but you could argue that a Christian having a highly patriotic sense to a country that's not his, I mean, you could argue that is artificial and manufactured. But can you really argue that a Jewish person having a highly patriotic sense towards Israel is artificial? I mean, is that really genuine?
I
Do
think it
you
is
really believe?
artificial because if it was natural, like I said, there wouldn't be so much effort that goes into brainwashing Jews into being pro Israel. Jews who are pro Israel in the US genuinely believe in Zionist propaganda. It's not that they're cynically conspiring, to save help Israel save face. They actually believe, the 40 beheaded babies and all this kind of stuff. And secondly, I don't understand what makes Jews less American than Christians. That's something I also don't understand. Uh, maybe you might want to make the argument that the only real Americans are WASPs, in which case you're also writing off the Ellis Island Italians and Irish and stuff. But those are the
Oh, I would.
same. The Italians and Irish are just as Americans as Jews are.
Sure, I definitely wouldn't make the case that all the only Americans are WASPs. But I mean the reason that many people say that Jews are not as American is because Jewish people just it seems like Jewish people have a dual allegiance. For them, Israel is equally as important, if not more important, than America. I feel like they care more about Israel than America. I mean, a guy like Ben Shapiro goes to Israel and says and they ask him, why aren't you coming back to Israel? And his response is basically that, well, because I'm doing important spy work on behalf of his Israel here in America. And I mean,
But
like, the whole crowd cheers.
but I think the same
And
loyalty is also evinced by fanatical evangelical Christians, if not more loyalty. So the question of dual loyalty should not just be pinned on Jews. You should ask more generally, why is there a conflict of loyalty? Why isn't everyone loyal to the interests of the American people? Because I think when you uncover that question, that there's certain people not fully loyal to what's best for this country and what's best for the people, you realize it's not a Jewish thing. The majority of these disloyal people are non Jewish, they're in power, and they're our ruling class. For example, the decisions made by ruling financial institutions about economic policy in this country evince more of a loyalty to global capitalism than to the needs of the American people here at home themselves. And why is that? Why do we spend so much on aid to Ukraine, for example, than we do for at home? Why are we entangled in Taiwan? Why are we entangled in Korea? So when you start asking these questions about the conflict of interest, it's no longer about Jews being disloyal because they're not American enough. It's more about the fact that this country is occupied by a ruling class that has no loyalty to the people that it governs.
sure, and that's definitely true. That's definitely true. I agree with that. But I guess the only thing I would say is that, you mentioned like WASP and I mean, what, like, Anglo-Saxon Protestants. I agree that most of them are Zionists because of the Zionist propaganda, because of the Zionist infiltration. But I mean, you don't see like um, American people of English descent being more loyal to England than the United States. In the same way, like you mentioned, Italians and these other immigrants, like Irish. I mean, you don't see Italians and Irish caring about Italy and Ireland as much as Jews care about Israel.
But you do see them sometimes caring about Israel just as much as Zionist Jews care about Israel, Zionists themselves. And the reason for that is because Israel is just a proxy for the interests of the ruling class. I think that the reason why certain people are less loyal, for example, to England than they are the United States, as you mentioned in the case of WASP, why aren't they more loyal to England than they are to the United States? Well, because it's not immediately in the interests, foreign policy wise, of the U.S. ruling class to prop up England in a way that clearly comes against our national self interest. I'm sure that if England's interests were ever threatened, that would be, I mean, World War I was a perfect example of an Anglo Saxon ruling class that cared more about the British Empire than at home, as a matter of fact. But whether it's Britain or whether it's Israel or whether it's Ukraine or whether it's Taiwan or whether it's South Korea, it doesn't matter. There's clearly a conflict of interest, and it's not based in any specific race, racial loyalty, or something like that. It's based in the fact that the ruling class, the interest of that class, is different from the interest of the American people. It's based in enforcing a global economic system, which sometimes does include putting the interests of these other countries before our own because they're more important as far as maintaining that global economic system.
All right, got you on that. That's definitely true. But it's for me. It's just a little hard to accept that our argument, our side, like me and you and the anti-Zionist, is that the Zionist entity shouldn't exist at all. Like Israel as
Yeah.
a nation shouldn't exist at all. Why would Jewish people on mass get behind that? Why would they not support the existence of their own homeland? And who's to say the opposite isn't true? Who's to say that they support like they support the existence of Israel against the existence of Palestinians, against the existence or the stability of the nation surrounding Israel. I get the feeling that most Jews most Jewish people, definitely those in power at least, are because of their ethnic solidarity with Israel, because of their ethnic uh, obligations, are very like viciously pro-Israel.
What I disagree with is that it's a natural ethnic solidarity. I don't think there is anything like that. I think that the cultural difference between Mizrahis and Ashkenazis, the cultural difference between American Ashkenazis and Russian Ashkenazis, these are such vast differences that I don't think it's possible to have an instinctual ethnic loyalty like you're describing. I think the Jewish identity that's tied to Zionism that you're talking about is the result of an ideology. But nonetheless, sure, I guess it does help, obviously, to tie Zionism to Jewish identity. It makes the ideology more real and more immediate. It's a specific way of dealing with Jewish identity, I guess. But, you know, will it be difficult for the majority of Jews in the U.S. to come to terms with the dissolution of the Zionist entity? Probably, but it's not down to them. Even if all Jews in America, or let's say 80% of Jews in America, were convinced to be anti-Israel, maybe that would have a big impact. It'd be a crisis. But ultimately, that's not why Israel exists. That's not why Israel continues to receive aid. Israel continues to receive aid and exist because it's strategically in the interest of the ruling class for this to be so.
Definitely, definitely. But don't you think, and maybe you can refute this or give a counter argument, but guys like Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager and Dave Rubin, they play such an important role in skewing public opinion here in the United States on behalf of Israel. And and there's people like there's those people, but I feel like there's a lot more people, involved in business and finance and politics that we don't see. Those are just like the people at the very top that are visible to us. Uh, don't you think it's important for the American public opinion to be behind to support Israel? And given that, wouldn't it be a natural conclusion that uh, Jewish people, Americans of or Jewish Americans with who have an ethnic Jewish identity are naturally going to be let's say soldiers of that Israeli mission who are going to carry on the task of skewing American public opinion.
if it's natural, why is there such a sizable minority of Jews who are anti-Zionist? They're a minority, but they're a very prominent minority, and there's an even bigger portion who are very critical of Israel nowadays and don't feel really that attached to it. So I just disagree with this idea that there's a natural ethnic loyalty or whatever. I think there's a artificial loyalty that's the result of brainwashing and an ideology. And if you get to the root of the source that you mentioned, Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro, yeah, they play a role in that definitely, as far as public opinion too. But sit down and ask yourself: is their position just being pro-Israel? Because last time I checked, there's also a lot of other things they preach in part of their propaganda. They also have economic views. They also have political views. They have ideological views. They preach support for Ukraine. They preach support for NATO. They preach support for the U.S.'s offensive posture against enemies of the regime in general. As a matter of fact, Israel just seems to be downstream from all of that, too. So I think you're basically saying, like, Jews are here. There's a conflict of interest because it's in their ethnic self-interest to support Israel, whereas it's not in our interest as the rest of Americans. And that's just what I disagree with. I don't think it's in Jewish self-interest to support Israel because I don't agree with Zionism. That's Zionist ideology. And I think not necessarily you, but a lot of right-wing influencers who are trying really hard to make the anti-Zionist cause an anti-Jewish cause agree with the basic premise of Zionism, that Zionism is good for Jews, that Zionism and Judaism are the same thing, and that ultimately the solution to the so-called Jewish question is Jews having their own independent state, specifically in the Middle East. So I don't agree with any of those premises. I actually think Zionism in Israel has been a disaster for the Jewish people and their tradition as a religious group and as a culture. I think it's devastated many of the local national forms Jewish culture has taken, whether it's in Germany, although obviously the Nazis did more damage on that front, whether it's in Russia, United States, France, Britain. There are so many national forms of Jewish religious culture that existed that kind of were totally eliminated and destroyed. Enmity on part of the Muslim world, which never had an issue with Jews, was cultivated by the existence of the Zionist entity. Suddenly, a huge amount of anti-Semitism now exists among Muslims and Arab peoples that didn't exist before. Hostility and enmity toward Jews is also being cultivated as a result of Israel's actions. I don't agree that Zionism is good for Jewish people. I mean, I think that's what Zionists themselves believe, which they're increasingly unable to demonstrate, actually.
Sure, but let me just ask this as a follow-up, I guess. How do you envision like convincing so many Jewish Americans, who are ethnically Jewish and many of which are influential or in positions of power? How do you envision them to accept that stance that Zionism isn't good for them, to not continue to advocate
I
for?
don't think my focus is convincing Jews who are in power of that. I think rather it's the Jewish majority who's not in power that I think I would be more interested in educating on
Never stop
anti-Zionism.
winning. You guys are on the
And do
right
you think
path.
that's possible or
Hamza,
reasonable
thank you.
to get Jews en masse, the normal Jewish people en masse, to become anti-Zionists?
Actually, I do think it's possible. I think that many Jews are part of the working class. Majority of Jews are not part of the ruling
Yeah.
class. And I think that Jewish identity can be made compatible with America more so than Israel very easily. I think American Jews who live in America are more American than they ever will be Israeli. I think their Americanism is more authentic than Zionism could ever be. I think they are Americans. This is their culture. This is their national context. And I think that anti Jewish sentiment harms that cause, actually, because it's reinforcing the Zionist view that Jews have no home except Israel. And that's not true. America is also the home of American Jews, and Russia is also the home of Russian Jews.
I see. So because Jewish people have always been a diaspora group. Do you would you say that, let's say, like the strategy, or like the mindset should be, let's get Jewish people to become integrated, or to love like the different countries they've been dispersed throughout their entire lifetimes, rather than focus on their homeland, and the aggression of
I think
an
the
aggression.
Soviet position was correct on Jews. I think that was
What was that?
uh, that was. I mean, the anti-religious policies. Obviously, there's much room for criticism across the board. But when you ignore the anti-religious policies and just focus on the national question, it's not so much assimilationism and destruction of Jewish identity as much as it is, making Jewish history within nations compatible with a national identity and patriotism. It's more of a fusion of Jews with their national context rather than them sacrificing their Jewishness. And if they want to do that, they have the freedom to do that, obviously. But there's room for, you know, um, maintaining Jewish identity beyond Zionism and beyond, this trope of rootless cosmopolitanism. Jews are have always had a national context, actually, and have always been rooted in a national context. Um, just because they haven't always been able to assimilate in nations in ways that was expected of them doesn't mean they weren't already part of those nations. It just means that there was a lot of remnants of feudalism and class distinctions that and religious distinctions that made them different. But for example, in England, British Jews simply became British. It's just like they were also Jewish, sure, but that didn't make them any less British. I think the same is true for France as well. Sure, there's always been tensions because of the religious distinction, but French Jews are French. Russian Jews are Russian. American Jews are Americans. Religion is one thing, but it's not the same as a nation and a country. They shouldn't be confused. They're related, maybe, but they're not the same thing.
Sure. And I guess the question would be, is that that integration, those efforts to nationalize the Jewish people, will it be effective enough to get them to let go of the idea of Zionism, of the idea
I don't think
of
the
like
issue is that we need to nationalize American Jews. I think the issue is that we need to oppose Zionism and Zionist institutions and Zionist um, dark money and so on, which brainwashes the majority of American Jews to be pro-Zionist. That's what I think it should be targeted against the hegemony in general, not just Zionist aspect, but the whole hegemony and all of the interests bounded up within it, Zionist and otherwise. Once you can have that, I think it's just a question of once you can detether entire masses of people in the United States, not just Jews, but entire masses of people from this kind of stream of propaganda and brainwashing, that opens a vacuum. And obviously, that vacuum can only be filled by a revolutionary American movement. I mean, Jews are already American. Remove the brainwashing and the Zionism disappears. They would just be normal Americans like anyone else. Same
I
thing with
mean,
evangelicals, Zionists.
mhm. To maybe push back just a little bit. Uh, don't you think given the fact that 80% of Jewish people right now, at least, um, are pro-Israel, say that Israel is very special and important to them, would they push back on that a little? Would they push back on the idea of anti-Zionism, of getting rid of the Zionist institutions, of getting rid of like the Zionist influencers like Shapiro, Prager, etc.?
Maybe not right now, but I don't think the majority of Americans agree with that either right now. That doesn't mean we should compromise our principles. It neither means that we should say all Jews should be written off as never being able um, to be persuaded, and neither should you say no Americans can be persuaded because the majority are. I think that yes, yeah. I mean, I get called an anti-Semite all the time because of what I say. Because for some Jews who call me anti-Semitic, being a Zionist is the same as being Jewish. But I shouldn't respond to that by agreeing with them and just saying, "Yeah, you're right. I hate Jews." That's not the solution. The solution is to maintain your own principled position, and if some ignorant people call me anti-Semitic, let them. Um, you know, I think my position has spoken for itself. I mean, I have every I have every opportunity to be anti-Jewish. Actually, I probably would get more followers. I would probably be more accepted in many communities. I am treated as an anti-Semite regardless. I don't get any benefits uh, from having a principled position on this. By the way, I don't get any benefits from it in terms of like how much I'm punished by the hegemony. Emory University, CARE, and other organizations, and the university claimed I was an anti-Semite. Um, so
But
institutions still call me anti-Semitic. I don't get a pass. I don't get more acceptable or less canceled. But
but
a
wouldn't
principled
that just
position is a principled position.
what? Yeah, but wouldn't couldn't that be an example of how actually for Zionism is important for Jewish? They say if they say that you're anti-Semitic because you're anti-Zionist, doesn't that prove that for Jewish people Zionism is an important part of their identity?
For Zionist Jews, Zionism is an important part of their sense of Jewish identity. Yeah, that's true, but is that the result of nature and ethnic instincts, or is it the result of brainwashing? And I think it's the latter.
I mean, I guess we can have like an empirical way to answer that question, and I mean, your case is definitely valid. But let me just give you like a little example of this whole like the Zionist Israeli Jewish population situation. I mean, you know about birthright Israel, where they take just everyday average Jewish people. You could be like
Yeah,
a quarter Jewish or yeah, you could be a quarter Jewish or whatever, and they'll bring you to Israel and they'll basically tour you everywhere for free, free everything, everything's
yeah.
paid for, and yeah, it's kind of a way to get ethnically Jewish people, ethnic Jewish Americans that may have never even been to Israel their entire lives to get them on board with the Zionist agenda, to get them to love Israel,
But
to
I
start.
think I'll give you a hypothetical. Let's say ISIS was just as powerful as Israel and did the same thing to Muslims. I think they would also have the same ability to brainwash Muslims, pull at their heartstrings, and get them to be pro ISIS. Obviously, the difference is that ISIS doesn't have the legitimacy or the money that Israel has. But if you can see my point, it's very easy to brainwash people by manipulating their emotions based on their identity to get them to support things that are not necessarily consequent from just that identity alone. Just because you're Muslim doesn't mean you have a natural inclination to support ISIS. So I think the same thing is true when it comes to Jews.
Sure. Let me make up like a little hypothetical to like explore this idea. Let's say I believe you're Lebanese, right?
Yeah,
You're Arab.
yeah,
Okay, you're Lebanese, right? So let's say like the shoe was on the other foot and Lebanon was like this ridiculously powerful imperialist country and it was bullying the people around it. Let's say it was like bullying like the like Jewish population or whatever. the same way Israel bullies Gaza and genocides them. And let's say you, I mean, as you are, you're like a Lebanese American living in the United States. Do you think you would have the moral clarity, the awareness to look past that and say, no, no, guys, actually, the state of Lebanon is not a good thing. We shouldn't support Lebanon. We shouldn't be on the side of the Lebanese government when they're committing such terrible
I
acts.
think I would be a bad example because I'm an example of someone who became a radical leftist for many years, and I completely rejected all aspects of my identity. So I probably have a lot in common with Jews who became anti-Zionist in that regard. So that was an example of me being able to look past my immediate identity and assume a position in no way naturally consequent from it or spontaneously consequent from it. I think many anti-Zionist Jews have shown the same ability. So I agree that having Jewish identity makes you um, more vulnerable to Zionist propaganda and brainwashing. I don't disagree with that.
Mm.
But I maintain what I said previously. That doesn't justify conceding to Zionism the equivocation between Jewish identity and Zionism.
Yeah, well, that's definitely fair. Yeah, fair point.
Anything
Yeah.
else?
Um, I mean, no, not really. I think that was a good conversation. I think that was productive.
Sure. See you later.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Oz.
No problem.